Hello there. Welcome back everyone to Void Dwarf Studios. Little bit of a random video today. I started making a video and got distracted by the Eldar, and also on how they are very pivotal players in how the Warhammer 40k world ends up becoming the way it is. So I figure we start with the Eldar's beginnings. As this is a faction-focused video on the Eldar, we shall go into a little bit their history, we'll go into how they operate, and what they're currently doing in the 40k timeline. So, way back when the old ones were still around, creating races, popping up planets, little side projects, all that kind of thing, one of the races they created were the Eldar. The Eldar were capable of not only understanding what the old ones were trying to teach them, but also learned a great deal about the warp and how to use it. The Eldar back in the day could use the warp to create, well, I guess you could call them gods. They at the time used them more like servants, so if you wanted to say an easier time farming, the Eldar would use their powers to make a god of farming, which would make them more able to produce higher quantities of food. If they wanted a god of war, they just created a god of war that would help them fight their wars, and so on and so on and so forth. The Eldar could do this because they are a very psychically gifted race. Almost all Eldar are psychers. Being a psyker for the Eldar race is more common. But not only that, the Eldar race were created to have a much higher understanding of their emotions, their sensations, their surroundings. They're more aware of the ebb and flow of the warp, and how to manipulate it. This is precisely how they are one of the few races that could create their gods on purpose, as opposed to it just being emotions, hopes and dreams coalescing in the warp and creating its own entity. This level of control and understanding of the warp and their powerful emotions get them into trouble later on, but we'll come to that. The most famous of their gods that they create are Cain, the god of war, Chigoris, the laughing god, and Aisha, the goddess of healing. They got so good at this that there was, in the end, a pantheon, each with its own set tasks, skills, powers, and abilities, all for the benefit of the Eldar to give them nice, cushy lives, whilst their gods did all the hard work. For a very long and unrecorded amount of time, the Eldar were living in relative peace. They were just expanding their empire and learning from the old ones. Things only started to go downhill when they encountered a certain species known as the Necrontyr. The Necrons had their own quest to conquer the galaxy as well, and they did not get on well with the Eldar at all. The races could not be more different. Whilst the Eldar were lithe, graceful, beautiful, and with advanced lives, the Necrontyr were frail, radiated, lived short lives, and were bitter, angry, and resentful. And this made relations between the two species very complicated. Because the Eldar did not wish to share their technologies with them, nor did the old ones, this created resentment, as the Necrontyr were a very ill race with very little health, lifespan, or resources. And when the Necrontyr attempted to expand their empires, the Eldar and the old ones put them down quite hard, pushing them all the way back to where they started. For whilst the Necrontyr had very capable and sophisticated technology in their own right, they simply did not compare with the Eldar. The Eldar could nip across the galaxy in their starships in mere moments, whilst the Necrontyr was still trudging along behind them, and far too slowly to wage any kind of war. This inevitably led to the Necrontyr seeking some way to get leverage over the Eldar and their masters. This is where the Catan turned the Necrontyr into what are now known as the Necrons, and the war in heaven began, lasting thousands of years and causing immeasurable destruction across the galaxy. And it was very possible that the Eldar could have been defeated by the Necrons and the Catan. The Catan were beating all kinds of crap out of the old ones, and unfortunately the Eldar, whilst psychically gifted and very capable, powerful warriors with advanced armies, the Necrons just could keep coming back. You could blow them into tiny pieces and they would just rematerialize back in their tomb worlds, regenerate and come back just as strong as ever. It was only because the Necrons decided to betray their Catan masters out of revenge that the Eldar and the Old Ones were finally able to get the upper hand, although this definitely cost the Eldar a great deal in resources and lives, and most of the Old Ones either were killed by the Catan or vanished. However, this did leave the Eldar as the sole masters of the galaxy. After the War in Heaven, where their masters more or less disappeared, the Eldar continued their conquest of the galaxy, and really didn't have anything that could oppose them. The Orcs, as I previously mentioned, were a minor nuisance, as they did not have the technology or the capabilities to get off planets, and so the Eldar used them more for just practice fire, really. And their technology was so advanced that they could blow up planets with very little difficulty, or conquer the various other races with very little at all in ways of resistance. Nothing could challenge them anymore. And because there was such a long period of peace, where everything was taken care of for them with the power of the warp, due to the various creations they used to make their life easier, they grew bored. So because of this, the Eldar decided to try some new pursuits. I mean, these pursuits started fairly innocently, they had so much time on their hands. They started exploring things like art and music and engineering and sculptures and just wanting to expand their horizons and their senses. But the Eldar are so psychically connected that these things eventually began to grow boring, so they started doing more extreme things. And the more extreme they got, let's just say hobbies weren't really doing it for them anymore. They needed something more extreme. The Eldar in their time of peace grew more and more depraved, grew more and more debauched, and they became the worst that society could. Atrocities, murders, committed all for the sake of their own pleasures. Law and order broke down, and the societies became ruthless in order to maintain control. Many of the Eldar hated the way their society was going, so they decided to leave. And they left and started new colonies, all following a strict discipline of controlling their emotions. On top of that, they also created a system to help them avoid ever becoming bored. They will devote themselves to a profession. So, for example, you might have an Eldar who decides, I want to be a carpenter. So the Eldar goes off and learns how to be the best carpenter that ever was. Pokemon. And, sorry. So what happens is, once he has perfected his craft, or at least as much as he's felt he can perfect it, he will do something different. He might become a warrior now, or he might become a metalsmith, or he might learn how to shape wraithbone, or he might learn how to make origami. It really doesn't matter. It's just that every time he gets to the apex of his profession, he must change to a new one. This carried on for some time. We're not entirely sure how long, but the Eldar that still lived on their homeworlds, continuing their lives of debauchery, depravity, and lust-filled madness, carried on simultaneously. But, eventually the Eldar got bored of even murdering each other, and all the sex and drugs and rock and roll went to their heads. And you know what they say about idle hands, when you're bored, and you're trying to think of something to entertain yourself, and you go, we can create gods. What if we just created a god of pleasure? That can't possibly go wrong. Well, it didn't quite work in the way they planned it. They did create a god, but not the one they were hoping for. This is Slanesh, god of excess and pleasure. Slanesh's birth was so violent and destructive that it caused a rip into reality, creating what is now the Eye of Terror. And the first thing Slanesh decided to do was eat the Eldar. Their delicious, tasty souls made fantastic treats, and any of the Eldar gods that attempted to stop Slanesh, as they are bound to their people and to protect them, got either destroyed, eaten, or the smart ones fled. The god of war Cain was shattered by the power of Slanesh, and now only exists as smaller avatars, which can be called upon in dire circumstances. Aisha disappeared. Well, she didn't so much get disappeared as she was rescued by Nurgle, although rescue is a very, very generous way of putting it. She's now a prisoner of Nurgle, who he force feeds his various poisons and diseases and watches her revive herself from the disease each time in order to make the poisons and diseases more effective in future. Chigoris, the laughing god, probably one of the smarter bunch, fled as soon as he saw Slanesh and went into the webway. This is where the story for the Harlequins really begins, but I will go over that in another video. But back to the homeworld. When things started to look like they were going downhill real fast, aka, Slanesh was absorbing and eating the Eldar's souls through the warp, those that were close to the explosion, that could, fled into the webway and managed to find safety in Komarag. Being hidden inside the warp, protected by the powers of the warp gates, kept the city safe. This is probably a good spot to talk about this. I probably should mention how the Eldar travel through the warp. Whilst they do have their starships, which are capable of jumping through the warp much like everyone else, with a protective field around it to prevent, demons and stuff from getting in, they also have these really nifty things called Eldar webways. Well, I say the Eldar. It's entirely possible that the old ones taught them the way to use the warp without having to go into the warp. If you've ever seen Stargate, it's a little bit like that, except you're not travelling so much through a wormhole as you're travelling through the warp. The webway gates were a more secure way to travel without, pesky things like demons or any other malicious creatures wanting to do them harm. As even before the Chaos Gods really started getting going, the warp was not a safe place. It just wasn't nearly as crazy as it is now. The way it works is you put one on a planet, you then build another on, say, another planet, you activate them using various runic glyphs that the Eldar had created, and walk through, and it creates a tunnel from one place to the other. But these Eldar gates don't necessarily just have to be used on planets. You can use them inside the warp. So, for example, you've made a tunnel into the warp. It goes from point A to point B. In the middle of point A and B, you can expand the size of the gateway, making potentially limitless amounts of space. Warp gates can vary in size, but typically speaking they're big enough for, they're big enough for the average Eldar to walk through easy peasy. You could maybe fit a Eldar Titan through, but it would probably have to stoop down to fit in. But for, troops, tanks, aircraft and, building materials, they were a pretty good size. Because of this technology, it was possible to create cities inside the warp, the biggest of which was Komarag. What was a minor junction became one of the largest sprawling Eldar cities that exists today. In current times, however, with the destruction of a lot of the Eldar's craft worlds, a lot of these gates got either sealed, destroyed, or lost, meaning that a lot of the various tunnels in the warp are not accessible to the Eldar anymore, making it harder for them to travel safely from place to place, because once the demons get in, you can't get them out. It's basically infested and there's no real way of cleansing the tunnel again. But even in the webway, the now Dark Eldar, or Drukhari, were not safe from Slanesh. Their souls, though safe for the time being, were slowly being sucked away. It was as though Slanesh was draining them. Even though Slanesh didn't manage to eat them straight away, it was still siphoning off their soul energy to it. Now, the Eldar belonged to Slaanesh. Their souls belonged to Slaanesh. So the Eldar in the Webway and Comarach had to think of a way to stop Slaanesh from eating their souls. And it turned out that if you, through experimentation and a lot of torturing and a lot of unpleasantness, they discovered that it was possible for them to absorb the souls of others through extreme, torture. There's no other way of putting it. Through extreme torture and pain, the Eldar realized that they could absorb the energy from other people's souls. And the longer that you could keep the person alive, the longer you can torture them for. The longer you can torture them for, the more soul energy you get. A bit like a cup of tea that keeps being drunk by someone for a straw. If you keep pouring more tea into it, then you will never run out of tea, in theory, so long as you have enough tea. Which is why the Dark Eldar go out and steal tea. They steal slaves, bring them back to Comarach, and then torture them for the rest of their lives. The Eldar had a similar problem when it came to Slaanesh. So the Eldar had to think of a way to prevent themselves from being eaten by Slaanesh, because no one wants that to happen to them. That is a horrific fate to have at the end of your life. So the Eldar created soul stones, psychically imbued stones that allowed an Eldar's soul to be contained within them. And on their craft worlds, they have what are called these soul matrices. What this does is, it means that when they all connect to each other, it forms a kind of, I suppose you could call it afterlife of sorts. The Eldar souls within the soul stones could still communicate with each other. And better still, in desperate times, you could use these soul stones in conjunction with their wraith bone constructs, essentially a building material with that the Eldar could shape like clay but had the strength of steel, into wraiths and fantastically powerful suits of armor. They put them into titans and fantastic engines of war. Or the soul stones can also be used to just power various systems on the ship. But more often than not, they tend to be kept together in the matrice and communed with by the Eldar Farseers or warlocks, asking for advice and, things people often do when they try to talk to people who are gone. If an Eldar spirit stone was ever broken, then that Eldar soul would be torn screaming into the warp and be met by Slaanesh. Not a pleasant experience. The Eldar wouldn't really move from this state of being for thousands of years. The Dark Eldar would continue raiding into the real space for slaves to use to keep themselves from being devoured by Slaanesh, and the Eldar would keep themselves as hidden as they could and use their psychic and precognitive gifts to try and prevent massive chaos incursions into the real world. They did, on a number of occasions, attempt, and I say attempt loosely because the Eldar really did not know how to talk to, or even who to talk to in the Imperium to prevent it, but they did attempt to prevent the Horus Heresy from happening. But it's just that their diplomatic abilities were somewhat lackluster, shall we say. And rather than speaking to the Emperor, who I suppose they just figured would kill them on sight, although he probably was the better option out of his sons, they talked to people like Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, people who were not very likely to listen to them in the first place, let alone believe what they were being told. So in the end, the Eldar could not prevent the great catastrophe that was the Horus Heresy, and for the most part stayed out of it. They had a lot of problems themselves to deal with, what with chaos and orcs and everything else trying to stamp them out. And the Dark Eldar didn't make it any easier. They were more than happy to prey on their Eldar cousins and just wanted to continue living their debauched lifestyles. It was not until much, much later that the Yunari became a group in their own, led by Yvraine, who was being whispered to by the Eldar god of death. The Eldar believed that there was only one way to defeat Slaanesh, and that was if they created a god that had enough power to best Slaanesh. This is a long shot, to be brutally honest, as Slaanesh is such a powerful chaos deity that it's unlikely that the Eldar's plan will succeed, but at present it's probably the best plan they have. Thanks to Uldred Uthran, who performed a ritual to create the god of death, and together, along with various other allies in the Eldar and Dark Eldar nations, as well as the Harlequins, servants of the Laughing God, who also managed to flee from the wrath of Slaanesh, they formed a kind of coalition where they were trying to push back Slaanesh. And this is currently where we find the Eldar at this point. And right now, the plan, as much of a plan as it is to use the spirit stones from all the Eldar craft worlds to empower the god of death, which, like I said earlier, is a long shot, and it probably won't work unless the entire Eldar race dies and are somehow put into spirit stones. But this way, it's meant that Eldar's souls no longer go directly to Slaanesh. There is a bit more of a tug of war going on. So that's better, at least for now. And there have even been slightly better relations between the Imperium and Eldar. Whereas in the past, the Eldar had this really irritating habit of turning up, killing their citizens, and then buggering off, not explaining why, or maybe mentioning to the Imperial Governor that, oh, we did this because we looked into the future and we saw one of your dudes was going to join Chaos, or create a big warp rift, or become a Chaos demon, or become a Prince of Chaos. So we decided to nip that in the bud for you quickly. No need to thank us. We just wish that you didn't shoot at us, because it would have made our job a hell of a lot easier. Talking would have probably helped too, but, the Eldar are getting better at diplomacy with other races. It's just that they have a bit of an arrogant streak. Despite the fall of their race, they still believe that they are the superior beings in the galaxy. And who knows, given enough time, the Eldar might be able to survive, maybe even flourish once again. But that is a long shot, to say it mildly. And on a psychic level, they have that as an advantage over humanity, but humans are far more numerous and far more likely to put up a fight against Chaos than the Eldar can. Right now, the Eldar are reduced to hit-and-run tactics. The only reason the Imperium hadn't stamped them out earlier was because it was so bloody hard to find them. Eldar were very, very good at hiding their craft worlds or their starships, and they tried their best to avoid any large engagements, because they simply do not possess the resources to go into a grinding warfare, especially with nations like the Imperium, who are more than capable to grind them to dust with thousands upon thousands of guardsmen. Any conflict that the Eldar get in has to end quickly. In terms of war, the Eldar now no longer have the armies they once did. They cannot call upon thousands of troops to do as they wish. They are scattered. They are small elite colonies which have their own various shrines and temples to various aspects of war. Each one is highly specialized, highly trained. Even their militia are of an exceptional standard. But suffice to say, they each are dedicated to a particular aspect of war. And whilst the Eldar are elite warriors, and quite capable of taking down a human without any difficulty, Space Marines are a problem, as they are almost as fast as the Eldar, and far, far tougher. I will go into the temples in more detail in a specific video, but suffice to say, the Eldar are fast, elite, with very specialized weaponry, highly advanced weaponry, with ancient and sophisticated technology. But the Eldar are not an evil race, not by their very nature. They are arrogant, certainly. They have a very high opinion of themselves, but they don't seek pain and, well, unless you're the Dark Eldar at the moment. The Eldar, however, don't seek pain for its own ends. They don't relish in killing other races on the whole. They just feel that in order to keep their race alive, there is no sacrifice great enough if it's in defense of the Eldar homeworlds. Well, I hope you've liked my little video of the Eldar race. I hope that this has at least informed you mostly of how the Eldar have been doing in 40k, and you can now understand why they've become such pivotal players. If it weren't for the Ynnari, Guilliman wouldn't have come back, the Indomitus Crusade wouldn't have started, and at the same time, if it weren't for the Eldar, it's entirely possible we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place. And if you have any questions, please like and comment below. Make sure you click that little bell button so you see my next uploads. And I hope you enjoy. I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Take care.